Hi everyone, Elizabeth here. So I wanted to do this video in regards to talking a little bit about Wetiko, which is considered a psychospiritual disease of the soul according to Native Americans. Just talking about that and then sharing some insight about how this is very similar to other spiritual theories as well as biblical teachings, that we can start to understand what is going on today. So a lot of people do believe that what's happening through this COVID-19 experience is that a lot of people who are asleep are under some form of like a trance or a spell. And actually, from the Native American perspective, a lot of people say that people are under Wetiko, which is a psycho-spiritual disease of the soul. I'm going to be reading some stuff because it's a little easier for me to maintain my track and my thoughts rather than bouncing from place to place. So what we're seeing today in this psychological madness is actually what some people say is a kind of a parasite or a leech that is attached to one's psyche, that's kind of blinding them to understanding what's really happening today. And this blindness is actually leading them into more forms of self-destructive as well as destruction of humanity. Native American mythologies portray the mythical figure of Wetiko as a cannibalistic spirit who embodies greed and excess and can possess human beings. The Wetiko was once a human being, but its greed and selfishness has transformed it into a predatory monster. Thus, in indigenous mythology, indulgent, self-destructive habits are thought to be inspired by Wetiko. In Native American view, those who have become Wetikos are individuals who have lost their wits. Basically, they've kind of lost their mind per se, or have lost some form of ability to understand or critically think from a moral or immoral perspective. Native Americans have often portrayed Wetiko as having a frigid, icy heart devoid of mercy. Like cannibals, those taken over by Wetiko consume the life force of others, human and non-human, for private purpose or profit, and do so without giving back of anything of real value from their own lives. So this is really interesting because it is very similar to what you hear in a lot of spiritual theories, which kind of talks about psychic vampires, which are pretty much parasitic leeches that are just sucking the soul from you. And that is what classical narcissism does. It is a person who is void of any sort of compassion or empathy within them, and they find somebody who is a little bit more empathetic and basically suck and drain all of their energy out as well as their compassion. So they need to seek praise, or they want that rescue type of lover, or the lover who is the rescue type, to provide some comfort and grace and more recognition and praise to them. So like a werewolf, Wetiko is sometimes portrayed as a shapeshifter who can even appear disguised as a good spirit. In the indigenous legends, whenever the Wetiko eats another person, it grows larger in proportion to the meal it has eaten, so that it can never be fully satisfied. In Buddhism, it portrays a similar figure, the hungry ghost, with its pinhole mouth, constricted neck, and a huge unfulfilled stomach, and can never satisfy its insatiable cravings. At the collective level, the perverse inner process is mirrored by the insane consumer society in which we live, a culture that continuously fans the flames of never-ending desires, conditionings, always wanting more. Just as viruses or malware infect a computer and a program to self-destruct, Wetiko programs the human biocomputer to think and behave in self-destructive ways. Covertly operating through the unconscious blind spots in the human psyches, Wetiko renders people oblivious to their own madness, compelling them to act against their own best interests. People under its thrall, like someone in the throes of an addiction or in a state of trauma, unwittingly create the very problems they are trying to resolve. clinging desperately to the thing that is torturing and destroying them. So a couple thoughts here is when you're talking about in the indigenous culture, if they're talking about Wetiko being like a shapeshifter werewolf, that's very similar to what you hear in the Bible, which is 2 Corinthians 11:14, which says Satan can mask himself in light or as light. So Satan or dark, destructive, demonic energies or forces can mask themselves in light. So the reason why a lot of people are leaving yoga, tarot card reading, meditation, because they're always stuck in some form of a loop, and that loop has kept them to need more and more of like the Reiki or more meditation. And although a lot of these things are very beneficial for us in forms of healing, meditation to some excess degree can come to a form of escapism, and the person becomes very consumed with themselves, not really so consumed or not really so concerned, about other people. So all of these different spiritual theories and or preachings, theologies, they all have very similar context. So in today's environment, from the Native American perspective, they're talking about people, being possessed by Wetiko, this werewolf type of spirit that's pretty much a parasitic monster that leeches to the psyche. And then in something like Christianity, they say Lucifer or Satan can mask themselves in light, and a lot of them also believe that demons can mask themselves in light. So you can be worshiping or channeling false light a lot of the times. Now so what I just kind of read is very indicative to what is happening today. You kind of see a lot of this more with the bleeding heart people or the far lefty progressives. And the problem is a lot of these people have complained about certain things over a certain period of time. They've complained about the government. They've complained about their lack of privacy because of the birth of Apple product or just technological products. And they've also just complained about many social issues as well as things like pharmaceutical. Now, the irony of all of this is that because of the pandemic, they have lost any form of insight or intuition to understand what is good and what is evil, and they have completely sided with government and pharmaceuticals companies who have been pretty much legalized murderers and legalized poisoners for hundreds of years or decades. Let's just say in the last 100 years, maybe since the Victorian era, let's say the last 120 years. They've completely lost any sort of common sense or knowledge, and are now, yelling at other people on the other side that they're anti-science when they don't realize that they are just blinded by their own bias, because science is showing both sides of this. Science can prove everything and anything, especially when money and funding is involved. So these people taken over by Wetiko are suffering from an autoimmune disease of the psyche. In autoimmune deficiency syndrome, the immune system of the organism perversely attacks the very life it's trying to protect. In trying to live, it destroys life, ultimately destroying even itself in the same way once Wetiko has insulated itself into a living entity. It acts like a perverted antibody, treating the wholesome parts of the system as a cancerous tumor that needs to be exterminated. So when you're looking at the jab, I'm not even going to say the shot thing because the stupid algorithms keep flagging videos. But when you're looking at this, when people have completely lost their senses and have not questioned anything about what the hell is happening, in science, it takes 5 to 10 years to get a drug on the market or get a vaccine on the market. It has to go through testing trials, animal and human trials, as well as long-term experiments to see if this is safe or not. And what have people done? They've completely ignored everything that they've ever fought against in some form of activism or frustration of wanting transparency and clarity and wanting honesty and truth from these higher organizations that are the parasites of the planet. The same people who are creating this thing that is creating this thing that's putting more poison into one's body, and graphene and all of this stuff, are the same people who are connected to government, who are also connected to other agencies and governments who are, say, ruining like the Amazon rainforest, which is pretty much the lungs of the planet. It's the same type of people. Think about something like this. I live in the Pacific Northwest. I love whales and orcas. We have had such a problem with our sea life over the last few years. When I moved here, I used to see starfish everywhere. I don't see starfish ever since 2013. They've gone. Supposedly they claim it's because of the warming of the waters and whatever, but we've had problems even with food sources for the local orcapods that are residential here, but they also migrate up to Alaska. And the irony of all this, the Navy, which there are bases here in the Puget Sound, have damaged our orca populations because of sonar. So the sound in the sonar that's coming off of the naval ships is too high of a frequency that's messing up the orcas. It's like damaging their brain, or they just can't really quite understand what's happening, the orcas, because it's such a high frequency that it's too much for them. So if you understand certain basics of spirituality, which maybe I'll do another video on, is that everything is energy and frequency. We've been progressing in a very great way over the last few years, and then these parasitic Wetiko individuals like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, one, they've completely destroyed the city, and two, now it's a collective environment. When you look at somebody like Jeff Bezos as well as Bill Gates' birth chart, you can see, I believe, I have to double check this, but I believe their Lilith is in Taurus. And that, when that dark side of the person isn't progressed or healed, they tap into that darker energy, and all of that roots to having greed and like takeover of land. And look at what Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos is doing. It's like they are just completely operating out of their dark side and buying up all these farmlands across the United States. And Bill Gates has, all these potato farms that are funneling potatoes to McDonald's, which is absolute crap and shit food for the body. Let me look back here on a couple things about Wetiko. Wetiko subversely turns our genius for reality creation against us so that we become bewitched by the projective tendencies of our own mind. People afflicted with Wetiko react to their own projections in the world as if they objectively exist and are separate from themselves, delusionally thinking that they have nothing to do with creating that to which they are reacting. Over time, this activity of endlessly reacting to and becoming conditioned by one's own energy tends to generate an insane behavior which can manifest internally or in the world at large. As if under a spell, we become entranced by our own intrinsic gifts and talents for dreaming up our world, unknowingly hypnotizing ourselves with our God-given power to creatively call forth reality so that it boomerangs against us, undermining our potential for evolution. Though the origin of Wetiko is within the psyche, at a certain point it develops enough momentum, becomes self-generating, attaining a seeming autonomy like a Frankenstein monster. The pathological fragment can sublime the wholesome parts of the psyche into itself such that they become its slaves. As this process continues, Wetiko gains sovereignty over the psyche like a legendary tiger, which, when restored to the life of its bones, devours the magician who resurrected it. It then holds its creators in its thrall, and she is unable to escape from the own hell that she is creating. The person so afflicted has created her own sci-fi nightmare within herself, and she is the starring role. To the extent we are unconsciously possessed by the spirit of Wetiko, it's as if a psychic tapeworm or a parasite has taken over our brains and tricked us into hosts into thinking we are feeding and empowering ourselves while we are actually nourishing the parasite. So let me say one more thing. Noting our almost unlimited capacity for self-deception, psychiatrist Artie Lang writes that we have tricked ourselves out of our own mind. So here's a couple thoughts. A lot of people, like I mentioned in another video, I said start reading about Stockholm Syndrome. A lot of people are blinded by some form of like compassion. So I do believe that every word or every energetic thing has a light and a dark side. And when you are blinded by too much love or compassion, it can lead you into a really wrong place, like the empath falling in love for a narcissist, thinking like, oh, he just needs love, and it's just like completely destroying that person without ever thinking or considering like maybe this situation is not healthy. The people who are in charge and who are doing all of this they've created a behemoth, and that is definitely a biblical term in terms of a demonic being or entity. And these behemoths are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and yet everybody is contributing to it. I've said this in another video. I'm so sick and tired of these freedom fighters bitching about the elites and people like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, but they sell their books on Amazon. You have to get off that platform. You have to drain that behemoth, and all of that money is energy, and it is constantly fueling a behemoth. Get off the platform and go to somewhere else like lulu.com and start something new. That's the whole point of like Telegram and BitChute. It is a platform for people to get off the censored things like Facebook and YouTube and get on something where they can have some free speech. So in some ways, those people are slightly blinded by Wetiko, because as much as they want their freedom and complain about it, they are selfishly very invested in their profit and income. So they're going to go to the platforms where the masses are. And that in itself is not the root of change, in my opinion. If you want change, you have to be a protester, and you can protest in your own life by not involving yourself in the mainstream. I've had a blog since 2015. It makes no money at all, but that's because I'm too stubborn to sell out. I don't want to do Amazon market, what is that? I can't even think. It's marketing, affiliate marketing. I don't want to do that because I don't want people to have to find something through this massive entity that has been ruining cities and small businesses, primarily in the city that I live in, Seattle, but also across the United States. These are disgusting blank warehouses that, I'm from Cleveland, so I went home to Cleveland and I just see these Amazon warehouses. They are so slate and they look like a hospital. There's absolutely no fucking inspiration in that. So I don't want to contribute to the destruction and to the ugliness that's being promoted through this whole modern world that we're living in. So I don't know if that makes sense. That would be my suggestion, or that would be my analysis of how Wetiko can affect all of us, and all of us have probably been affected by this. I got divorced in 2017, and I remember my awakening moments for the political sphere was between 2015 and 16, and I thought I was losing my damn mind because of all the things that I started waking up to and being like, oh my God, like I voted for Obama twice and I didn't even know what the hell was happening because I never paid attention. And the whole point was I got so sucked into politics, it partially crumbled my marriage because I was so blinded by, the waking up crowd. I was exiting the matrix. I was doing all of that, but I was so sucked into politics. And then the irony of it is when I went to Burning Man, which is a whole other topic in itself, in 2016, I was really communing in the energy of the desert and the beauty of this extremely hot place. There was a ton of art and music there, and I'm a pretty sober person. Like, I probably had 5 drinks the whole time. Like, a lot of people go there to do drugs and other dark stuff that I'm not, you know, partaking in. But I came to realize that even in 2016, I was like, how dark and disgusting the whole government and the whole politics was. Even if I agreed on one side and disagreed on another side, I didn't want to be a part of it, because it was so much fighting and so much hate and so much disgust that I just, you know, I was in this moment of creation, but also with people who were just in a very positive space at that point in time. Like, the whole bartering system, you hand out a gift. There was a nice part of it, although there's a very dark side to that culture, which will be a separate video in itself. Burning Man, to some degree, actually kind of led me to Jesus, but that will be a different video. So this is not to judge anybody. We've all been blinded by our own selves or our own self-destructive paths. But the irony of what's today with the jab, people are self-destructing themselves with this shot. We don't know enough about it. And also, we are making the behemoths of the planet bigger and bigger and bigger. And we are making ourselves weaker and weaker and weaker. So we have gone from slight balance and harmony, see, like middle class, to now we're, you know, really rich, really poor. We're becoming so imbalanced that the collective is on a path of self-destruction. All major evil empires have always failed. Evil will always fail. You just don't want it to get in power. And we've known enough with history, because we should be more intelligent enough today, that hopefully we can stop evil getting into power. These people are deep down wetikos. They are 2 Corinthians 11:14. They are Satan masked as light. And that's where people are so... America has been so blinded. I mean, to just follow a celebrity who's a professional actor or actress, to listen to them, whatever it is, to buy a Nike shoe or to stick a needle in your arm, to become like a legalized, almost a heroin injector. It's madness. So maybe part of breaking the system of your own matrix, or exiting the matrix, is getting out of the loop, living your life in a protest that maybe not necessarily might not be mainstream, but it gives you the freedom. It's why I'm not doing a ton of videos. I'm like, I don't even want to be online. This doesn't even feel that great to just bitch and complain in a camera, but hopefully it can help some people along their way and path. So recognize your blind spots, bring awareness, and hopefully you can find your own path that's not continuously keeping yourself in this loop. I'm going to do a separate video on why I'm med-free and all of that, because I do feel like I've lived my whole life health-wise in a protest against the mainstream. I've always been mad and frustrated against the fast food industry and all of this stuff, because it's been such a plan to destruct people's immune systems and their health. And now the most unhealthy people are the ones who have died or are dying or having really bad adverse reactions. Although there are exceptions to that, there definitely are, especially when it comes to the shot. There's a lot of normal, healthy people who live a pretty decent life health-wise, and they have died from it. But in terms of, if you're looking at the statistics of COVID from 2020, the mass majority of people were either overweight or obese, or they already had one or more pre-existing issues. All right, thank you so much for liking, sharing, subscribing. Get out of your Wetiko, and hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.